Good evening, students. Today we will discuss about the sixth chapter of your CBSE book, that is Work, Life and Leisure. In this chapter, we will discuss about the process of urbanization and we will explore how the modern city emerges and what happens within the cities. Our topic is work. Basically, in this chapter, we will discuss about the meaning of urbanization and urbanization of two cities in the modern world. The first is London. The first is London, the largest city in the world, and the second is Bombay, one of the most important city of Indian subcontinent. In this chapter, we will see how the modern city emerges and what happens within the cities. This chapter is broadly divided into five parts. The first is the first is characteristics of the city. The second is social changes in the city. The third is politics in the city. The fourth is the city in the colonial India. Colonial India. And the last one is cities and the challenges of the environment. In this chapter, we will discuss about the historical processes that have shaped modern cities in decisive way. The first is the rise of industrial capitalism. The second is the establishment of colonial rule over large part of the world. And the third is development of democratic ideas. Basically, in our first topic, the characteristics of the city, we will discuss about the ancient cities and later on about the modern cities. Towns and cities which were situated along river valleys such as Ur and Mohenjo-daro were larger in scale than other human settlements. The major reason behind this is the land of both cities were fertile and useful for agriculture. These cities provided increased food supplies, and these cities became the centers of political power, administrative network, trade and industry, and intellectual activities, and supported various social groups such as artisans, merchants, and priests because these were densely populated areas. Now the question is, why were these cities densely populated? I have told you in earlier that these cities were fertile and useful for agriculture, so they were able to provide each and every essential commodities to every human being. So these were densely populated, and because of densely populated, they are more developed than other cities. These cities were greatly in size and complexity, and they can be densely settled like modern days metro cities, which combine political and economic functions for an entire region. And obviously they support very large populations. Now we will discuss modern city, and this lecture is divided into some subparts. We can say the study of modern cities is divided in some subparts. The very first is today we will discuss the characteristics of the city, and in this topic some subpoints or some subparts are made. The very first is Industrialization and the rise of modern city in England. The second is this topic, industrialization and the rise of modern city in England, is also divided in some subparts. The first is expansion of London, and the second is the factors which were responsible for the expansion of London. The very first is expansion of London, and the second one is the factors which were responsible expansion of London, for the expansion of London. At the time of 1850s, most Western countries were largely rural. In spite of beginning industrial revolution, Leeds and Manchester, the early industrial cities of Britain, attracted large numbers of migrants to the textile mills set up in the later 18th century. But now the question is, what was the reason behind it? Basically, these cities were densely populated, and in these cities, labor could be easily found out. So these attracted the people to set up textile mills and factories. If we talk about London by 1750s, 1 out of every 9 people of England and Wales lived in London, and the population was 6,75,000. And over the 19th century, London continued to expand, and its population raised from 1 million to about 4 million. Thus, we can see that London continued to expand. But now the question is, what were the major factors of this expansion? In our second subtopic, that is the factors which were responsible for the expansion of London, we will discuss about it. Basically, these factors can be divided in two parts. The very first is London was a city of clerks and shopkeepers. The second is, the very first is the city of London became a powerful magnet for migrant populations, even though it did not have large factories. But it is said that at that time London was a city of clerks and shopkeepers, of the small masters and the skilled artisans, and of a growing number of semi-skilled and sweated out workers, of soldiers and servants, of casual laborers, street sellers and beggars. So we can say that highly educated people were also available there, and the laborers were also available there. So somewhere it became a powerful magnet for industrialists, because they could easily find the cheap labor. And apart from it, there were 5 major types of industries, and they were employed large numbers: footwear, food and clothing and footwear, wood and furniture, metals and engineering, printing and stationery, and other products such as surgical instruments, watches, and objects of precious metals. So we can say that every essential thing was provided by the London at that time. And during the First World War, London began manufacturing motor cars and electrical goods, and the number of glass factories increased, and they provided nearly one-third of all jobs in the city. So somewhere when London was able to provide was able to provide employment to unemployed people, so somewhere it became a powerful magnet at that period, and it continued to expand. In this topic, our second point is marginal groups. In this topic, we will discuss the meaning of marginal groups, and this topic is also divided into some subparts. Now, the first question is what is the marginal groups? Basically, the people who are downtrodden, or we can say deprived of all the essential commodities, and those who are not getting the benefit of all their schemes that were conducted by the government and other social workers are known as marginal groups. Basically, this topic is divided into some subparts, that is criminals. The second one is situation of women. Before and after the First World War. Before and after the First World War. And the third is condition of children. Condition of children. And Compulsory Elementary Education Act. The very first topic, criminals, is also divided into some subparts. The first is crime became widespread concern. And different groups were anxious for different reasons. Different groups were anxious for different reasons. For different reasons. And the second one is efforts to stop the crime. To stop the crime. Now we will discuss the first topic, that is the criminals. Criminal is also included in marginal groups because at that time crime became widespread concern, and I have told you that different groups were anxious for different reasons. Now we can classify different groups in police, philanthropist, and industrialist also. At that time police were worried about law and order because the duty of police is to maintain law and order, and if crime is available in some locality, then somewhere it is considered the failure of police. Second, the philanthropists were anxious about public morality. Now the question is who can be considered as philanthropist? The person who works for social upliftment and charity, donating time and money for the purpose, are considered as philanthropists. The third part, the third group is of individuals. Sorry, the third group is of industrialists, and the industrialists were also anxious because they wanted to get a hard-working and orderly labor force, and because of the existence of crime and criminals, it was not possible for them to get it easily. At that time, now we will discuss the second topic, efforts to stop the crime. At that time, when number of criminals were rising, the police tried to control the crime, and for this, the population of criminals were counted, their activities were watched, and their ways of life were also investigated by the police. And the other efforts included in an attempt to discipline the population, the authorities imposed high penalties for crime and offered work to those who were considered the deserving poor, so that by offering work and by employing them, they could stop the crime or criminal activities. Now the question is, who were considered as criminals at that time? Many of whom he listed as criminals were in fact poor people who lived by stealing lead from roofs, food from shops, lumps of coal and clothes tying on hedges. There were others who were more skilled at their trade, expert at their jobs. They were the cheat and tricksters, pickpockets and petty thieves. crowding the streets of London. So basically, somewhere everyone tried to stop the criminal activities. The second is situation of women before and after the First World War. Before the First World War, the women's situation were downtrodden. We can say with the technological developments, women gradually lost their industrial jobs and they were forced to work within households. And at that time, according to a census, there were a million domestic servants in London, and whom the vast majority of women, many of them were recent migrants. But when the First World War started, it changed the situation of women. As women got employment in wartime industries and offices, they withdrew from domestic services, and somewhere they began to participate in industrial activities also. Now the third is Condition of Children and Compulsory Elementary Education Act. At the time of 19th century, children were pushed into low paid work, often by their parents. Now the question is why the situation of children were like so? Because according to the census and according to the data, at that time a child could earn more money with the help of criminal activities rather than with the help of legal activities. And at that time, one could gain as much as the young thief. For example, at that time, a child that is 7 years old is easily known to make 10 shillings 6 pence a week from thieving. Before he can gain as much as the young thief who must make 56 gross of matchboxes a week or 1296 a day. So somewhere the thieving activities were proving more powerful, more fruitful for them. And after the passage of Compulsory Elementary Education Act that was passed in 1970, it changed the situation of children. And after it, the Factory Acts beginning from 1902 that children were kept out of industrial work. So these two acts helped children to improve their personality, or we can say to improve their situation.